question, grab your hook. Join the fun, come take a look. Wool and yarn, we chicken sleep. Time for question of the week.
Right, this week's question of the week. I love this week's question of the week. Why is crochet so addictive? So if you are a crocheter, I would love to know why it's so addictive for you. But for me, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. I'm going to start with the yarn. So the yarn, I have so much yarn. And invariably, I do not have the yarn that I need for the project that I want to make. So I'm very fortunate. I make postbox toppers. I'm very fortunate in that I have been gifted yarn for those toppers. And then I also make products to sell. And I also design patterns. So I have different yarns for that type of work as well. Obviously I buy in, and quite often I will sell kits on patterns that I've made. So again, I'll have extra yarn for that. So that seems like actually buying yarn. Most yarn artists, I'm going to say yarn artists for this, but most yarn artists will have two separate hobbies. Maybe three. Oh, actually, maybe four. One, yarn is one hobby. So buying yarn and using yarn, two separate hobbies completely. Buying patterns, so seeing a pattern and thinking, oh, I really like that, I'm going to make that one day. So if anybody's a reader, you will have a to be read pile, won't you? So a list of all the books that you'd love to read, that if you didn't add any more to it, there would be more books there than you could read in your lifetime if you read 6 hours a day. And patterns are a little bit like that. So I will have a list of patterns. I thought I'll make that one day, and then it goes onto the list, and whether it ever actually comes off the list and gets made is another thing. Then I'm going to put notions. So notions, which are all the little bits and pieces. So I'm going to include the hooks with that, although maybe it's not. But things like, I love a tape measure that retracts on its own. So you pull it out and it holds, and then you press something and the whole thing retracts. I cannot think of anything more lovely than that. Well, I can, somebody making me a brew, but you know where I'm going with that. Stitch markers. There's so many beautiful stitch markers. And generally, I'm only going to choose one or two in a project. However, I've probably got 40 stitch markers. Some are just sort of fairly plain ones. In fact, well, if I looked at plain ones, I've probably got hundreds, but you know, I do like a stitch marker. I have other little bits and pieces. I'm trying to see if I've got things here to show you, and I haven't. They're downstairs. Like a gauge measurer. So measure my gauge so I can see how many stitches I've done in my rows or in my stitches. So notions, that's another very addictive section of it. And then actually making something, that's addictive. It's very rare that I wouldn't crochet in a day. I would normally spend at least an hour or two, or 4 or 5 in a day crocheting. It's very rare I'm not crocheting. So that in itself is a separate addiction. Why is it addictive? Because it brings joy. You know, choosing things that make you happy brings joy. Choosing patterns that you'd like to make something of, it brings joy. Finishing something that you're either going to gift or you're going to use, it brings joy. And for me, I'm quite a practical person, and it's nice to have things that are practical, that you know somebody can use, and that they will be able to use and enjoy. So yeah, I love this question. Why is it so addictive? I'd love to know why it's addictive for you, but for me, that's those reasons.